Greetings, everyone. I've been playing on this public SMP for a while called Experiment B, and it's pretty interesting because, as you can see around me, I'm in the Backrooms. It's an SMP in the Backrooms, and I mean, like it's an actual like you can place and break blocks. Okay, this is like pretty cool, right? Um, so it's a public SMP. What the heck? How did this guy? Okay. This is a public SMP. Anyone can join it. I'll leave the IP in the description, so if you want to join it, you can. You may notice that this video is over half an hour long, and I'll get to why in a second, but first I want to show you some pretty cool factors of this Minecraft server. So I'm currently in level 0 of the Backrooms. You can see it says level 0. The thing is, there are actually more than just this level of the Backrooms. Now I am at level 1 of the Backrooms. This is a pretty cool SMP. It's really fun. There's a lot of effort being put into this SMP, and it's public, and the IP's in the description if you want to join. So the reason this video is half an hour long is because I've recently been writing something on this server known as the Prophecy. It's basically a prediction for how this server is going to end via popular YouTuber logging on and, fan base destroys the server. But good news, I finally finished it. I'm going to be narrating the entire story in this video with just some like basic footage of me playing on this server in the background. If you want to just like listen to this video in the background while you do something else, you can do that. I mean, I don't really expect anyone to reasonably listen to like just my voice for half an hour. I think that's a little unreasonable. But if you do want to watch this video for some reason, you can learn a lot about this server. And, as I've been saying, there's like a lot of effort going into this server right now. Again, feel free to join. It's a really fun server. As you can see, there's even a soundtrack right there. A lot of areas in this server get to have their own soundtrack, so that's pretty cool. Alright, now please like and subscribe because I'm trying to get monetized. I know it's not going to happen anytime soon, but, you could make it happen a little faster. Okay, please and thank you. Alright, bye. This is Add the Uber, and I present to you the Prophecy. Oh, by the way, I'm wearing a smiler head. Okay, this is what my real head looks like. Okay, enjoy the video. The Prophecy. Day 1. I would have said it happened in slow motion, but it was over multiple hours. I first felt a slight sense of unease when I saw the username. It grew to dread. Then it stopped. Fortunately, this was the situation I had been preparing for. Still, even I could not have predicted what had followed. The creator logged off. The server was now alone, save for a few new players and myself. I was the only one online that recognized the significance of what had just happened. The creator had logged on, and the messages they sent in chat tipped me off. I could tell the developer, or the greedy hypocritical rich players, but they'd give me the same reaction they always did. I had no choice but to let the chaos unfold. A few hours later, I got a notification. I had subscribed to the creator to know when they would inevitably upload the video that would all but evaporate the server. There it was, the video that I had warned about for many months now. I saw the number go up. Thousands of people had viewed. Tens of thousands. Then, a player logged on the server. And another. And 4 more. I knew what this was. Within a minute, the server had reached its player limit. I knew if I logged off, there was a good chance that I would never be able to get on again for a long time. So I waited. Soon, the swarm of players had all made it past the starting area. Some had made considerably outstanding pace, while others had much slower tracking. It was worth noting that the server had been struggling to hold all the players. Many complained about the constant freezing, some had logged off to immediately have their place taken by more, and some recognized me from the creator's video and wanted their voices to be heard. At last, there was a point where I needed to log off. I had prepared for this for a long time, but I now realized there was nothing I could do against this impassable player limit. I could only hope the developer made a solution, and fast. Moments after I had logged off, I had gotten a Discord message. I knew exactly who it was from before I even looked at it. Day 2. The developer closed the server. They said it was only temporary and it would be up again in a day or two. The server's Discord had completely gone to chaos. Hundreds of messages were sent across every channel every minute. It could not be contained. It was one of the first parts of the server to fall into ruin. Of course, there were many solutions for this instance. Over the past 20 hours, I'd gotten hundreds, possibly thousands of direct messages. They were almost entirely from the fanbase of the creator. Had I not been on when the creator was creating, I would not have to deal with this, though on the other hand, I probably had a big responsibility I now needed to fill. In the months leading up to this event, I had found a teammate. They were now the most sought-after player on the server. The reason for this was very simple. A long time ago, this player had predicted the very events that were happening now. Not everything they said ended up being completely accurate. Maybe a few numbers had been stretched or underestimated, but their underlying purpose was very clear. And they called themselves the Prophet. Yesterday I had received a direct message a few hours after the explosion. I knew who it was from before I'd even opened it. It was the Prophet. At last, what they had said had come true. Unfortunately for the server, they were now radio silent. No messages, almost never seen on the server, though it was down anyways, and no announcements. The Prophet had warned me that they would do this a long time ago. They always were for people facing the consequences of their own actions. I knew there were probably many very important people on the server that were trying to get a hold of them, and I knew even better what their response would be. Still, it meant that almost all of their responsibilities were now put onto me, but I too had been given my cautions. My teammate always told me to prepare for this scenario. I thought it was frivolous, though I decided to listen to them anyways. Only a few dozen hours after the explosion started, I had already learned something new about the server. It seemed durable like bricks from the outside, but when actually put under pressure, it broke like dirt. It was made of very durable dirt, but it still made the sound of bricks when it broke. Very loud, slightly unpleasant, but there was a hidden beauty in it. Later that night, the developer announced that they would temporarily increase the capacity of players the server could hold. Day 3. Thousands of players were waiting for the server to open up again. Once it finally did, I managed to log on quickly enough to secure a spot. The developer had upgraded a large portion of the server, giving it a much better performance, but it still had a little trouble handling the sheer amount of players. I was at the spawn of level 1 where I had logged off after giving screenshots to many players. Yesterday I thought about the situation I had been placed in. I thought about the role the Prophet had given me. I thought about the convenience, if you could call it that I was online when the creator was constructing their fanbase bomb to detonate on the server. I thought about how me having two major factors to play in this game were incredibly unlikely, how it could have been anyone else online alongside the creator, or nobody at all. I thought about how tiny, insignificant events like those had such massive effects on the fanbase. I thought that if all of this happened again, I would not have as many responsibilities as I do now, though whether or not that was for the best I had yet to give thought to. Most of all, I thought about what the creator thought of me, or even if they still knew who I was. It was a glorious sight. The moment I logged on, I saw hundreds of messages welcoming new players to the server. Everyone was crammed at spawn where I could not see them, but I knew what was happening to them. I soon had to micrify the size of my chat to see better. As if on cue, a mega crate had just spawned. The only players that could claim it were myself and the small fraction of the fan base that were lucky enough to secure a spot on the server seconds after the explosion. This was the first time I had ever shown my ruthless side to the mass of players. Before the explosion, I loved to find and destroy bases of other upper-class players, to the slight dismay of my teammate. Now I saw why. I was indirectly encouraging the blend of all players into a single, very poor class of wealth. I ran for the mega crate. The fanbase tried to reach it first, but they were no match for my incredible, now nearly unobtainable gear. The crate seemed to be much more fruitful than usual. There at the crate, it came to me for the first time that mega crates would likely have to be reworked, or else they would soon be unobtainable. I, along with all the other upper class, would have to wait for the developer's word on this. During this time, the player mass had made their way into level 0. I could only imagine what was happening there, and I did not want to find out. A few of them were lucky enough to make it out of the mass and progress far enough to get to level 1. The rest of them, as was evident in the chat, were all killing each other, over and over again, having nobody to stop them from eating themselves. The server soon hit the player capacity limit once more. At this moment, a thought came to me for the first time. It was unclear whether I alone could survive this apocalypse. Unless the developer repeatedly reset the server, allowing me to continuously claim seats online, I had virtually no way of consistently staying active on the server. A few hours later, I was still online. By this point, the mass had largely made it to level 1 and beyond. It gave me a chance to see all the wreckage that had happened on level 0. Fortunately, due to the mass knowing my name, I was easily able to convince them to tell me where they had all spawned in. The naturally generated world close to the spawn was gone, almost no trace of what it looked like pre-explosion. Instead, the mass placed many random blocks around the area out of habit. Other than those old blocks, the entire area of about 10,000 square blocks or so was evaporated. Once again, later that night, the developer had made the decision to temporarily close the server. Day 4. This morning, I called a meeting with many other upper-class players. Most of them were not very happy to see me, but we put our smaller conflicts aside to focus on the emergency that was happening around us. We had 40 minutes until the server opened up once more, so the 7 of us gathered in a Discord call and began discussing. It turned out that of the 7, there were only 2 that still did not believe in the severity of the explosion. The rest of us were finally taking the prophet seriously, which, after talking, we decided it was not too late. Even I thought the prophet had overestimated the time it would take to search, break, and evaporate every block and every non-renewable resource. We also started to compile a list of every single renewable resource on the server. The list was much too long to complete in the 20 minutes that we gave to it, but the progress we made was good enough. We decided to later come back to this list to identify which resources were very valuable and what the best method to renew those resources was. The server opened up, and as usual, there was an overflow of players waiting to join. I logged on the server. At this time, I realized I had made a mistake. Not a grave one, but one that certainly caused an inconvenience for me. The previous night, I had logged off in the area that was decimated by the fanbase. Unfortunately, I did not pay attention to any of the messages in Discord. I had stopped ever since it had started being flooded. The players found the exact location I had logged off and were now attempting to kill me. Joining them was one of the upper class players. Most of the players had no armor, although some were able to get some leather and chain. With the help of the steel-wearing upper-class player, they spawned me in lava with obsidian walls around me. I was able to get out of the box, but I then had a new problem of surviving around 50 players attempting to kill me. After I killed the one leading them, I was able to invoke fear into all the other players. I decided to leave before the steel wielder came back. That ordeal made me realize something very important. My status as someone even remotely related to the creator meant that I had to be very careful. Not just with where I decided to log off every night, but also anywhere combat is enabled. I did not have the motivation to gauge the severity of this issue. After I arrived at a safe area, I just finally decided to put real thought into evaporation. I reached out to the other 6 upper-class players I had talked to that morning, and we decided to reconvene to figure out and predict the near future of the server. After some discussion, we reached a few conclusions. We realized that the server's random spawn teleportation system was very flawed. In an instance where the player count was not hundreds every day, like it had been for the past many years, this would not be a flaw, but instead a convenience for the player. Each time someone spawned into a level by random placement, instead they are sent to one of many set locations in the level. This selection of locations is also random for the most part, but it meant that theoretically, after a prolonged period of time, every set location in every random teleportation level that had set locations would be searched and evaporated by the mass of players. We also found, after some research, that each set location is not determined by the player, but by the server. This meant that instead of each location being changed after a player gets sent to it, many players can get sent to the same location over a substantially relatively long period of time. This is why all the new players spawned in only a few locations when the explosion happened. The effects of this would be devastating for the mass of players. It meant that every time a player without sufficient resources went to a certain level to acquire said resources, instead they would be met with a bedrock floor and a bedrock ceiling. This meant new players needed to travel very far out of their set locations to obtain even the most basic resources. The effects would be less damaging to the upper class since we had stockpiles of almost every valuable resource on the server, but we knew eventually our sustainability would crumble. We were unable to find a solution to this problem at that current moment. I decided on my own to attempt to be a guardian of these locations. Later I realized the server's tri-daily consumables auction was nearing conclusion. I checked to see what item was being auctioned off. It was an item only obtainable in consumables auctions. This meant that all new attempts to claim this item would be so incredibly more competitive than they had been prior to the explosion. Fortunately, I had stocked up on these types of items. It seems no other upper-class player had noticed this item, meaning it was still mine for the taking. I knew very well this could be my very last easy victory in the consumables auction. I knew the prices of these items would very likely skyrocket as soon as the very next day. At this time, I had a decision to make. I had decided to be a guardian of the spawn locations, but I did not know what that even had in store for me. The main divergence of conclusion I had was the class divide of the players. If I chose to hide all my wealth from the lower classes, I would remain wealthy on this server forever, but it meant lower class players would never have any options regarding upgrading their status. The other option I had was to give to the lower classes and slowly rebuild the damage caused by the explosion. This was certainly more dangerous for me, as it meant if no other upper class members wanted to reach equilibrium, I would inevitably be forced into the lower class with no way to reclaim my once glorious seat. The developer had created a system where they make daily announcements about the server at around the same time every night. Tonight, they announced that they would propose a solution to player capacity while the server was down. They also kindly asked for players to donate to keep funding the server's large computation process. Day 8. I was a few minutes late when the server started today. The server had already filled up from players. I was put on a black screen with a number that said queue position. I needed to wait for a few minutes to log on to the server. The past few days have been very eventful. A few of the small events can be listed together. The creator made a second video about the server, bringing even more attention to it. Many people donated to the developer to keep the server running. As I had predicted, a new consumables auction had been completed. It was the most competitive the server had ever seen. Hundreds of thousands of credits in total were put into the system by all the players. This entire time, the developer was working harder than ever before to keep everyone afloat. There were many server crashes and restarts, many lag spikes, and many complaining players. Still, they worked without any tire to ensure playability and tolerance. They announced that soon they would need to greatly increase the size of their staff team, knowing it would be a challenge to find enough loyal and trustable players. They had not yet found a solution to this. The most notable event overshadowed all of these. Yet another history-writing decision had been made, although this time by the mass of players. On the 4th day of the explosion, I had been attacked by a large amount of players, being led by an upper-class player I referred to as the Steel Wielder. That same player had now made a faction meant for the mass of players to join, even if unofficially. Even now I do not feel safe repeating the name of the faction, so I will give them the placeholder name of the Voiders. The goal of the Voiders was very simple: to destroy as much of every world on the server as possible. Their only motive seemed to be that because they could, they had to. The Steel Wielder had two goals. They would first search every part of every level, not to evaporate, but simply to bring to publicity. Their driving force for this was that they did not want any player to have any secrets, any hidden stashes or bases. This way, most upper-class players who weren't careful would fall into poverty, giving the Steel Wielder an undeniable advantage and a respectable amount of control over the mass of players. The second goal of the Voiders was to find and evaporate every set spawn location. On some levels, there were thousands to possibly even millions of set locations on each level, taking quite a long time to get to every single one, though not futile, considering the player base was now well into the thousands. However, other levels had only one set location, meaning almost all of the Voiders' efforts would be directed at those singular locations. At the time, I did not know how to react to their actions. Later, I went to one of the set locations. There I found nothing but a bedrock floor and a bedrock ceiling, just like I had on level 0 days prior. I brought with me one of the other 6 upper-class players, who we decided to call judges. We stared at the undying abyss that was released upon the area. There was a lower-class player nearby, possibly a Voider themselves, but we decided not to attack them. It wouldn't accomplish anything. It seemed there was nothing we could do against these Voiders. Day 14. Over the last few days, the server has continued to fall into chaos. The mass of players have progressed far enough to reach almost every level. Everyone knew that soon enough, of the uncountable safe spaces on the server before the explosion, only a select few would be left. One of the most notable things that has happened over the last few days is the sheer amount of media that has been about the server. Hundreds or maybe even thousands of videos and images of the server have been distributed throughout the internet, and one message shines in all of them. This is real. This is actually happening. Long ago, the Prophet concluded their theory about viral Minecraft content. They found that for an idea to have even a chance at success, it needed to meet 3 separate criterions. Their theory went as follows. The idea needed to be accessible and reasonable. Though there are very rare cases where the audience is uncaring towards the more extremely crafted ideas, typically people wanted to see something that was at least somewhat grounded. The idea needed to be original. It needed to catch the audience's attention in a way that felt new. This criterion, combined with the requirement for accessibility, is the largest funnel of Minecraft content due to the surprising difficulty of balancing the familiar with the exotic. Finally, the idea needed to have effort. Whether that be spending hundreds of hours completing one's idea or just trying a little bit harder than most, it needed to be thorough and put together in a way that perfectly fit the other 2 criteria. The Prophet realized this server, although it was very far away from supporting mass popularity, and in some cases even against it, had all 3 key elements to go viral. It was then that the prophecy had began production. The Prophet themselves recently had a light shown on them. By now, the majority of the player base knew who they were. Soon after, they announced that if they were to be found roaming on the server, they would speak to whoever located them. The server had been progressing smoothly. It was as if the explosion had finally died down, and the rate of destruction and evaporation felt across the entire server had slowed to now be at a constant rate. It was still far beyond what any of us upper-class players were capable of fighting against, but at least it was now somewhat measurable. Unfortunately, most of the upper-class players had now begun to suffer from the effects of the explosion, such as completely extracted areas, lack of partners willing to trade, and, most importantly, non-renewable resources. I myself had begun to face the damages of the explosion. Items such as food and transportation materials were being drained from me, with ways to get them being depleted even faster. If I didn't find a solution to this soon, there was a chance I could fall down to the lower class level. At that point, I would need a few miracles to climb back up. I needed 18 tiers of effort to repair 1 tier of destruction, but I couldn't worry about that now, when there were still some wells that had yet to be tapped into. I'd largely given up on retaining the server's pre-explosion glory. I realized that it was pointless. The server was going to be completely extracted soon, so I might as well obtain as many resources as possible while I still can. It's not like I have anything else to do with my experience, so I decided to just let this experiment be as it is. My teammate used to tell me that their plans reached far beyond the server. I realized now what they meant. Days become meaningless. I stopped measuring the time after day 26. There was no longer a point in doing so. Now I can only explain all the major events that have happened. I myself have experienced almost no victories. All my bases have been found incompletely raided, which I assume was done by the Voiders. Almost all of the non-renewable and slowly renewable resources in my possession were now gone. I was powerless compared to the server's new titans. I hadn't just been revoked from the upper class, I'd become indistinguishable from a player who joined during the explosion. For all everyone knew, I was. My history with my teammate could have been a lie. The Voiders won. That is the best way to put it. Their level of destruction has made resources that were once easily accessible now impossible to find without assistance. It was now preferred to start the server with a friend already giving you items, so you wouldn't be completely stuck. I don't remember what day it was that the Prophet sent one final message to the entire server. I don't know what I expected from them. maybe an appreciation message or some knowledge for new players. Probably the most likely thing would have been an "I told you so" to all the pre-explosion players. But instead of that, the Prophet simply sent one single word. That word still resonates throughout the server today. The Steel Wielder. They were now by far the most powerful player in the Backrooms. To anyone else, a working force of hundreds was absolutely unheard of, only dreamable, not achievable. I still do not understand how the Steel Wielder rose to the position of power that they did. They seemed nowhere near stopping anytime soon, but I will list all of the major impacts they and the Voiders have had on this server. They have made level 0 uninhabitable for a base. They have destroyed at least 30% of the moldy crates on level 0, possibly more. They have extracted every valuable resource within 800 blocks of spawn on level 1. They have evaporated and griefed the spawn of level 1. They call it remodeling. They have found and looted every iron ore room on level 2. They have evaporated at least dozens of giant square chunks on level 2. They constantly patrol level 4 for events that take place there, killing anyone who is not one of them. They have made level 5 uninhabitable for a base. They have evaporated almost every elevator on level 5. Those who spawned in level 5 now struggle. They have marauders constantly patrolling level 6, looking for anyone who is not one of them. They have done unspeakable things to the spawn of level 7. I cannot begin to describe what they are. They have begun evaporating level 24. It will certainly be a very long time before they finish, but they plan on doing it one layer at a time. They have people constantly camping in the end, waiting for each reset, so they can take all of the resources. They have people constantly camping level 0.2 to take all of its resources. By the time 0.2 is about to reset, it is completely evaporated, every single time. They are constantly patrolling level -1 to kill anyone who is not one of them. This has led to items obtained from the whiteout to suddenly be extremely valuable, giving them even more monopolies on previously abundant resources. They have people constantly patrolling level fun. The entities on that level were no longer one's biggest threat when exploring there. To add the uber level of power in their hands, they will occasionally camp outside the hub entrance to level 0 and wait for new players to join, so they can either grow their workforce or prevent new players from joining entirely. They have near absolute control over the population of the server. They have done the impossible and tamed the explosion after months of its rampage. Who knew it could have been done so quickly?